All right, and good morning and welcome everyone to our second session of NAVHDA's 2023 Leadership Summit, Membership Engagement, Tips and Techniques from Association Leaders. Thank you for joining us here today for this session, and we hope you're going to learn some really great, valuable lessons from your peers. We would also like to acknowledge and thank our sponsor, Banfield Hospitals, for their generous support of this event. A few housekeeping items before introducing our speakers for today's session. On the bottom of your screen, there is a button called Q&A. If you have a question for our presenter at any point during this presentation, you can submit it through the Q&A button. And we really ask for you guys to submit your questions throughout because we really want this to be a very participatory session. You can also raise your hand if you'd like to ask your question live to the panel as well today. There's also a chat button at the bottom of your screen. You can use this feature to chat with other attendees, and we really do encourage that. But we do ask if you have specific questions you'd like answered to use the Q&A box, as that's where we'll be monitoring most of them. This session is being recorded and will be available on the NAVHDA website approximately a week at the conclusion of this event. And at this time, it is my pleasure to introduce our sponsor, Rachel Beck, Director of Technician Programs at Banfield Hospital, who will introduce our panelists for today.
Hello, everyone. Thank you again for being with us today. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers for this morning's session. I would first like to introduce Hayley Pritchard, current president-elect of the Alabama Veterinary Technicians Association. Hayley is a Florida native who moved to Alabama in 2008 and currently works at Auburn University as an animal care manager. She holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in Animal Sciences from Auburn University and an Associate in Applied Science and Veterinary Technology degree from Jefferson State Community College. Prior to December 2022, Hayley worked as the veterinary technician for Auburn's University Veterinarian. An established lecturer and author, Pritchard is an active member of NAVHDA and is passionate about professional growth and advancement for veterinary technicians. In addition to her role as president-elect, Hayley is AVTA's liaison to the Alabama Veterinary Medical Association. Married with a family of 3 fur babies and a daughter, she's excited to serve the veterinary technicians of Alabama in these many capacities.
Thank you, Rachel. Excited to be here.
Also joining us today is the current president of the Big Sky Veterinary Technician Association and regional contact for the American Association of Equine Veterinary Technicians and Assistants. Eli Olind is a born and raised resident of Whitehill, Montana. He graduated from Eastern Wyoming College in December of 2010 with an Associate of Applied Science degree in veterinary technology. Eli has been certified through Montana and working at a mixed animal practices since 2011. He currently works at a mixed animal practice in McAllister, Montana, and does guest lecturing of veterinary technology at Pima Institute's Dillon campus. Eli also serves on the BFVTA's legislative committee, working alongside the MVMA to put licensure in place for veterinary technicians. In his free time, you'll find him competing at a rodeo or out on a horse in the mountains.
Oh, thank you.
Hayley and Eli are also joined by Betsy Hensley, current past president of the Massachusetts Veterinary Technician Association. Betsy has been in the veterinary field for more than 25 years and is extremely proud to be a member of such a wonderful group of veterinary professionals. An active member of the MVTA for many years, she became certified in 2005 and spent 10 years of her career as the Technical Education Program Manager at IVG Hospitals Incorporated by Ethos Veterinary Health. In 2016, Betsy earned her Massachusetts DESE license in animal science and has been teaching at the high school level ever since. She was the department head of the veterinary assisting program at Worcester Technical High School, where she worked in both the veterinary assisting students and veterinary students from Tufts University. Betsy is currently the Credential Support Specialist at Veterinary Emergency Group, a member of NAVHDA, and speaks locally and regionally on a variety of topics. She lives in Chelmsford, Massachusetts, with her furred, feathered, and two-legged family members. Welcome to all three of you, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for that great introduction. And so to kind of kick off our panel today, I will ask this to the group, and maybe Betsy, you can start off with us. So we're here to talk about engagement, and part of engagement is communication. So in your experience with Massachusetts, what have been some of the most effective communication tactics that you've utilized to reach your members? Why did you find them so effective?
This is a great question because it's one of the hardest things that we've worked on in the last 10 years that I've been on the board in Massachusetts. And we use member clicks as our platform to actually send out our newsletter. So we actually have a newsletter. We used to have a newsletter that we would send out monthly. We toned it down to once every 2 months, which actually makes the open rate a little bit higher, we think is part of the issue with that. We originally had got put in CE in our newsletter. So we would put in articles similar to NAFTA, where people could read the article, answer a quiz, and then gain one CEU from that experience. So that was, I think, super helpful as well. We actually have noticed in the last 6 months, our open rate for our newsletter, which has all different things, and it has jobs in it, it has a letter from the president in it and all of that. But because we actually have active legislation going on in Massachusetts, I think our members are really interested in that. And so they're opening our newsletter, and we do have updates on that every 2 months as well. So I do think that has been very helpful for that engagement. And we also, one of the things I think we'll talk about a little bit more later, but we offer CE to our members. That's kind of what can we offer them that they they need, and also will keep them engaged with our association. And so we also have big CE events, and so they're always looking out for those as well. Of course, the pandemic has changed a lot of that, and we went to online things, but I do think that's part of it as well.
Awesome. Hayley, I'm going to throw the same question over to you. What do you think have been some of the communication tactics that you all have found to be most effective down in Alabama?
I think I agree with a lot that was just said. I do think that adding in social media has been really beneficial for Alabama, just engagement through different platforms to try to reach our members, but then also making sure that we're surveying and sending out different polls and really reacting to those proactively. So when we get that information back from our members, either through social media, telling them to comment below or tag us, or share things with us that they want to see, or whether we're directly polling them in a survey, then not just doing that, but taking it the step further to be proactive in the next CE that we offer, or event that we offer, or targeted speaker that we bring on, so that we're listening to them actively and bringing them what they're telling us they want to see from our association. So of course, not everything is feasible, either financially or just not going to best suit the majority of our association. But we have found that using surveys and polls and social media to collect the information from our constituents and our members helps us to better basically program our CE events and what we're offering to our members. And that alone brings in their interest and gets the engagement from that end.
Kind of on that topic of surveys that you mentioned, Hayley, has there been anything that you've come across that has surprised you about the membership? Like, have you as a board thought one thing, and then when you did the survey, found out your members were thinking about the issue differently?
That's a really great question. I don't know that I've thought about it that way. I'd have to probably think about specifics to try to give you a solid answer, but I know that there have been years where we thought, okay, we polled the year before, what do you want to see for next year's annual conference, which is our major CE event, and usually an all day with multiple rooms and speakers. And we put that together, we took it and ran with it. And then we have found that those were the rooms that were least attended. So that's been surprising. In terms of response, it's always across the board. You know, you have people that are interested in equine or farm animal, and you have people that are interested in lab animal or fear-free. A lot of it ebbs and flows with what's happening nationally too. You have professional development, that's always a topic, but then, you know, people may comment something about the VNI or whatever is most pressing to technicians and credentialing across the states and across the nation. But I don't know that there's anything that we've polled that has been just, nothing's really sticking out as a huge surprise to me, I guess. It's usually broad, which is why we like to poll. We get a lot of different angles.
Great. Eli, I'm going to ask you the same kind of communication tactics question as well. What have you guys found in Montana to be most effective in engaging your technicians?
So right now, we just currently switched over to using member clicks for our communication. So being able to send out mass emails to our members and then being able to actually view the open rates on how well they're actually being viewed by our members. And I think that's helping quite a bit. So I've been on the BSVTA's board for going on 10 years now also. And when I first got on the board, we were actually hand mailing out all of our communication stuff. So we'd print everything off, put them in envelopes, and even doing it the old school way, we would still get a lot of response back, but as we evolve, it's nice to be able to see how well stuff is actually opening. We do try and do surveys, kind of like what Alabama is doing with theirs about polls and surveys. But with our membership so far, we've been finding like a low response rate on that. So I think we need to go back and reevaluate maybe how we're asking the questions and stuff that way. But so far the member clicks, and then we host CE events also. So we try and host 2 to 3 events a year. And in those we have in-person membership meetings where we're trying to grow our membership, but then also inform all of our current members on what we're currently working on. And we're working more on engaging people and stepping up and helping with hosting CE events. So like right now, I have a member who is going to help set up our fall CE for this year. So like booking the event, helping book a speaker, and then we are more of like the advisor. So she brings us information she's getting, and we kind of just give the advice on how we would like her to go about getting everything set up. So.
Great. A few questions that have come in, and I'll just kind of, I know you guys have been answering it a little bit in the chat, but just to kind of level set, I guess, could each of you guys kind of talk to the membership of your associations and kind of how that represents the number of technicians in your state?
Sure. I think I wrote ours in the chat because I looked it up before this morning, that we have roughly 1,600 full CVTs, so fully certified veterinary technicians. We also have 112 lapsed members, which I think those statistics are pretty great, actually, that people who haven't renewed, because in Massachusetts, we're not compulsory, right? In Massachusetts, we're not even mentioned in the Practice Act as a profession. Veterinary technicians are not in the Veterinary Practice Act. So we are completely, people want to, they do kind of thing. They don't need to. We also have 164 student members and 15 pending members. So people who have applied but haven't yet gotten processed. So I think it's a great question of, well, how many technicians do you have in the state? I wish I had an answer to that. I don't know that. And I was just quickly trying to Google if I could tell you even how many veterinarians we had, which is, I probably could give you a better number of that. I could extrapolate. We've talked about that, how many technicians we have, because we don't reach them, right? Because they're not our members. So, I mean, Massachusetts is a pretty dense state. We're small, but we're a pretty dense state. We have a lot of people and a lot of veterinary practices. So I'll do a little more research to see if I can figure out roughly how many people we have acting as technicians in our state.
Cool. Hayley, would you like to take that question next? I've seen you've been putting some answers in the chat too.
Yeah, so if you don't mind refreshing the question, because I was typing when I want to make sure I answer it directly, and I was typing.
Yeah, sure. How large is kind of the Alabama Association, and how many do you think are percentage wise are your members that represent kind of the overall number of credentialed techs within your state?
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
So every year we purchase our LVT directory from the state board, and so unfortunately it's not comprehensive. I do understand the privacy, but we get their name, their license number, and their email, excuse me, their address, but we can't get their email address. So that limits you because you are bound to expensive snail mail for trying to capture those members. But we had about 500 listed in the state directory from the Alabama State Board of Veterinary Medical Examiners in 2022. And I'm actually about to send out the check to get our 2023 listing, but I would say probably about 70% of our membership is LVTs, and we have a lot of students. We have 2 accredited vet tech programs in Alabama. Both of them are online. One is a hybrid program that has some in-person laboratories, but I would say 70% is LVT, and then the majority of the rest is student. We have a couple of associate members that are industry professionals or veterinarians or assistants or other clinical staff, CSRs, things like that. But I would say the vast majority are LVTs.
And Eli, would you like to answer that question?
Sure. So a majority of our membership are credentialed technicians. So we're kind of in a phase right now where everything is transitioning, because the BSVTA was the credentialing body for so many years, but starting the beginning of this year is when everything is transferring to licensure under the state veterinary board. But I think total credentialed wise of technicians that the BSVTA credentialed, I think we were at about 250. So we have a really low number for the big state we are, but we also have a smaller population than a lot of other states. So I think we have close to like 800 practicing veterinarians in the state and about 250 credentialed technicians.
Great.
So a good majority are members of our association. And then we also have a pretty large group of associate members that are veterinarians and support staff and students.
Great. Eli, kind of sticking in with you, what did you find to be some of the most effective approaches in working with your members to educate them on the new licensure requirements in Montana?
In-person meetings.
In-person meetings.
Yeah, we would hold regional meetings all across the state. So Marcia Contrell, who was kind of the main tech on the licensure stuff, she and I would travel all over the state and set up regional meetings, and we would host dinner and have a drink session, and we just sit down with veterinarians from all over and just have discussions on everything. So, and that evolved a lot over the years because we did several every single year, and a lot of times we try and hit how we broke up the regions. We try and hit each region at least twice a year. And we start out where you try and do like a PowerPoint presentation, but then it's late after work. People don't want to sit there and look at a PowerPoint. They get bored. So then it evolved to more of just sitting down. Usually we had set up where there was a bar close because everybody would go get a drink, come back, and it was just a nice relaxed atmosphere, and you would just have roundtable discussions on everything. And I think that was probably our most effective.
Awesome.
Curious how many members you had join you like in those regional meetings when you were going to them.
Yeah, I would have to go back and look. I can't remember now off the top of my head, but we would usually leave with a stack of new membership applications filled out. So, and it was going to be really interesting this year because of everything moving over to licensure, and we aren't the credentialing body anymore. We were really interested on how that would affect our membership numbers. And so far, I think our membership is up about 10 to 12%. So
that's really great. Betsy,
I'm muted. I was just going to compliment you. That's awesome and great news to hear because, we are not compulsory right now. It's totally voluntary. But once we move to legislation, hopefully someday in my lifetime, we always think about that with our association. How do we remain viable? How do we keep members, even though, they're not coming through us to be credentialed anymore. So.
I think just showing your value on the communication aspect of when you have a member, so a lot of our communication stuff, especially on the legislation updates, we kind of made it where it was member only could access it. So it was one of those membership benefits. So because we are a membership-based organization, so we always have to put our members first.
Yeah. And I also would love to dovetail on your comment about in-person meetings. We did that when we made changes to our credentialing rules. So we used to have an alternate pathway until December of last year. And we did for 3 years, we had established that alternative pathway would be the last time for 3 years. It had always existed. But we went to one of the places went to the teaching hospital. We went to, we have a veterinary school in our state. We went to the major corporations that have major, like Angel is in our area. And we went to where I used to work at Mass Vet Referral Hospital and some other big corporate players as well, and went into the practices and had, similar to you, started with a PowerPoint, wound up into a nice conversation kind of thing. It helped. It wasn't perfect. We had a lot of people be surprised when it finally, came to closing that window, but I definitely think those in-person things helped. It's really hard to get communication out to people who aren't your members already, right? That's a big struggle.
And also, along the lines where you guys are working on heading towards legislation, when we were doing those regional meetings, when we were getting closer to having bill drafts, we started inviting legislators to all those meetings also. So then they were engaging with our tech membership and getting to learn about veterinary technology, because most of them have no idea what we do for a living.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
I'm curious, Eli, what platform you guys use to have a membership portal. Did I hear that correctly, that you have a certain login?
We use the MemberClicks company.
Okay.
So our website's designed through them.
Ours is the same. We use MemberClicks as well. And I saw in the chat someone saying there's another alternative they thought was a little less expensive. We just like MemberClicks because it does everything for us. We have our annual conference. We use that MemberClicks to register. We have a survey. We now use MemberClicks. All of those things are done all through MemberClicks. We used to piecemeal it with all these different platforms. Some free, like SurveyMonkey was great. It was a good tool, but now we can have it all in one place, which is nice.
And are you guys using a webmaster or designer service, or are you doing all of your web design and membership portals and surveys and things like that yourselves?
So one thing with MemberClicks is you kind of go through this whole long training session with them, and you kind of pick what templates you want to use, and they kind of design it for you, and then you can go in and make changes. And they have shown us how to go in, and we can change the website however we want to make it. So I can take information off and replace it with new information, build forms for all of our events. And if I can figure it out, pretty much anybody can, because I'm not techno savvy at all. So
that's awesome. Yeah, we have one of our long-term board members, Ed Carlson, is our webmaster, and he does all of the stuffs.
I'm going to allow one of our participants, Stephanie Perry, to kind of speak to her experience with the different platform Wix. Stephanie, do you want to kind of share your insights into how you are using Wix to communicate with your members?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Perfect. I was the chair of the website committee. I still am, for the Academy of Veterinary Dental Technicians. They were using MemberClicks. And when I took over, administration of the website, I was getting terrible customer service from them. And the interface for me, I didn't really like it all that much. And the investment they were making every year was enormous. So maybe it's because I'm comfortable with websites and all that stuff that I was like willing to take on the project of doing it. But Wix is, I mean, the total cost per year for us is probably $400 or $500. And I can sell tickets to conferences. I can do all my email marketing. It gives me all my analytics for the email. Trying to think about, I have like a members only area so that members can have, you know, pages that are they only have permission for members. Like it's incredible. And for the investment, Wix just continues to like come out with new tools that we can use. So I've just been like, that's the third website. I built one for my business. I built one for the ABDT, and now our association as well. So and it's kind of drag and drop for the website too. It's really easy to learn, really easy to use.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing, Stephanie.
Stephanie, could you drop your website in the chat? I'm just curious to see what that platform looks like. We currently pay a web designer and have our website domain set up through them, but it's expensive. It's $200 a month. And so we were previously using Weebly, and I'm not tech savvy either. And it was okay, but it was just kind of dull and it didn't have really any additional features. So I'm curious to, just from the Alabama side, explore some of these other things. I've heard of Wix. I've never heard of MemberClicks before. Thanks.
Great. I'll also throw another platform that people can also look into is Wild Apricot. That's a very affordable kind of membership management site that also has really great web building features as well. And so if you all are looking for a nice cost-effective way to host your kind of membership state association, that is a platform I would also highly recommend. Kind of moving along and talking a little bit more again about engaging with our members. I'll ask this to Hayley. Hayley, do you find any difference in engagement from your membership depending on the type of program, offering, or issue that you're looking for participation with?
I do. We are largely small animal membership based. So those small animal topics usually tend to get the most interest, with sprinkled in interest in farm and large animal. But when we do things for laboratory animal and research settings, or we do something too specific to the smallest audience, we don't get as much response. And we do get good response, like I said, when we poll and then do an event that matches that poll with the majority. So that's really how we've been doing things, is polling and then running with that vast majority. And we've gotten good response when we do that. We also get good response, as I mentioned earlier, when we stick with a really relevant topic of something that's either at the forefront or something that's been teased by NAVTA or starting to come up in discussion. So being at the forefront of whatever is starting to happen in vet med in general, whether it's vet med as a whole or just to technicians, if you can try to get in on those discussions and pique interest ahead of the big massive wave of information that comes out, people tend to participate and start to buy in, because that's when they're most interested in seeing what's going on, when they start to first hear the initial buzz of a hot topic.
Betsy, same question to you. Do you find that there are particular issues or programs, offerings that engage your members more than others?
Oh, definitely. And I think in Massachusetts, we've found that people like in-person CE for meetings, not so much. That's actually the opposite. So having meetings that are remote, actually, we get a lot more participation if we have like an annual meeting, in a remote platform. But we grew our annual conference from, a couple of hours at the local community college to a 2-day event where we had almost 700 people in attendance over the 2 days. So because they just love it. They just love that it's all technicians. We used to be all CE only by technicians as well, but then we did change to adding in doctors as well as speakers. But we would have a huge conference, a huge vendor area. We would provide lunch. We have awards, and all of that just really brought our members together. Members got a huge deep discount. Non-members were invited. That was one way we could communicate with our non-members. But I believe that the fee was double for them to come. So it was just, again, another member benefit that they had, all of the CE for $60, and our non-members paid a little bit more. So again, in Massachusetts, legislation is a hot topic. We get emails all the time from our non-members, from doctors mostly, or practice owners asking what's happening, and those kinds of things. And that is something that I, again, believe our open rate for our newsletter is because people want to know what's happening with that, what's going on with that. So that's a hot
Do
topic.
you guys move your conferences around the state, or do you host in the same place every time?
That's a great question. So as I said, Massachusetts isn't very big compared to a lot of other states geographically, but we have a concentration of people and, of course, doctors and technicians in the Boston metro area. So we held it just outside of Boston, and we still do. That's our annual conference, is actually in a town called Sturbridge. But the Cape Cod, actually, technicians on Cape Cod, it's kind of isolated. It's not an island, but it feels like one to them. And so they asked us, would you come out and do a conference? We'll help, we'll get, and we do that. So before the pandemic, we were annually doing 2 in-person conferences. The Cape Cod one was quite small, but we have enough membership out there that they were very appreciative of that out there. So we don't move around the state because the western part of the state is definitely less populated, but we have it in an area where people could easily get a very affordable hotel room if they wanted to, for the night, for the 2-day event, or even for the 1-day event. And now we hold it in a conference center with a hotel. So a lot of people took advantage of the room blocks for that as well. So, but Montana's a really big state, and Alabama's a lot bigger than us too. So, I mean, can't imagine like Texas. I mean, it's really hard to manage when you're a huge state, for sure.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Hayley, do you guys move kind of your CE events around the state?
So we have not always. Traditionally, we were centrally located. The majority of our concentration was in the Birmingham area, which is most central, North Alabama, centrally located, I guess. But probably, I guess actually it was last year, we did our first big CE event over a summer, and we did it in Gulf Shores by the beach. And we kept it small on purpose because we capped it to 70 people because we weren't sure. And this is the first time we'd gone somewhere to do it. And because our executive board is scattered throughout the state, we knew we would all have to convene and try to plan something from a distance. None of us lived there. And so we kept it small, but it was really well attended. And we actually had people that we had to cap it. Like, we had more than 70 that wanted to come, and we said, sorry, this is what we're doing this year. And so this year, our annual conference, we're moving to Huntsville, Alabama, which is North Alabama. We're a little bit nervous because the annual conference is our biggest. So we dipped our toes in the water, I guess, pun intended, for the beach. And that was really well attended for a summer CE, which was a half-day event. And this year we're going big, and we're moving our annual conference to Huntsville and seeing if it works to move around the state. Still trying to stay in some of those bigger cities that have lots of things to do and try to make it worth it for our members. Like, similar to what Eli was saying, we're going to have our annual conference event, and then we're going to have a mixer at a brewery and get some food and just have a relaxed roundtable discussion after the conference. So we'll see how it goes. Wish us luck, but we're trying to move around the state a little bit more because we are a decently sized state, and it's harder to get our members involved when we only do it in one area. So we're going to try it out and see how it goes.
That's great. A question that's kind of popping up in the chat now is, I think these are kind of both related. and you both have kind of touched upon your participation in your CE events. But have you seen a big difference between, CE that you've done during the pandemic when we had to be virtual, and then CE when it has been live? In terms of participation and people being able to attend?
Yeah, that's a really great question. We actually just did, so October is our month when we do, it's when fall season, that kind of thing here in New England. So like I said, right before the pandemic, 2019, we had almost 700 people in attendance. That included vendors, that included speakers. We just did our fall conference in October of last year. We had 2 days of virtual. It was all virtual, and our attendance numbers were not horrible, but they were definitely down from the in-person. I believe, and I was just about to look it up, but I'm going to check and see if I misspeak, but I believe we had roughly 300 people in attendance over the 2 days. So most people, 300 on Saturday and 300-ish on Sunday as well. So we offered different tracks and different topics and those sorts of things. And that's another, great point that Hayley's been bringing up, like getting feedback from our members as to what do they want to hear about. And by and far, anesthesia is a hot topic, right? Everybody wants to hear about anesthesia. So every year we have anesthesia. But it's really hard to get that moving target just right, because we do have a big fraction. We're in a very dense area with a lot of research, with a lot of research technicians as well. And so trying to get them what they need to but that's been a challenge for us.
And I agree with Becky. Live has been most attended for us. We did really well with 2 virtual events. That was the first time we did virtual events during the 2 years that we had COVID. This past year in 2022, we did both. We offered a virtual and we offered live, and it's a lot of work to do that. But I was surprised that we still have people that are like, yes, we love that you're doing virtual, but we honestly didn't have that many virtual only. We are people that paid for in-person and came to the conference. They got free virtual access for all the on-demand content afterwards, and they could access that. But we also had on-demand only tickets that people could purchase, and those were really few. So this year we're still tossing around offering virtual on demand, but it's a lot of work for not much reward, and it's by far more fun and engaging for those people that come to the conference. So I agree with you completely.
So Hayley, can I ask a follow-up on that? Was your virtual stuff was all on demand after, it wasn't live during the live session, or was it both?
Correct. No, we just did it on demand afterwards. We recorded the sessions and we did it afterwards.
Awesome. Thank you. That is expensive. That's super expensive.
Well, I'm a little bit lucky because I work for Auburn. So Auburn University, having a veterinary college and having just the access to the resources, we've been lucky since I've been on board, and our secretary is also at Auburn. We pull some of those resources. So we have a media group that they're still charging us, but it's like I'm an employee, but I'm also not doing it for Auburn. So we have to pay for it. But we've been able to tap into some of that. But yes, external media groups we're talking like $10,000, whereas we've been fortunate in Auburn to have connections to do it for a few $1,000s. So, but yeah, it's expensive either way, and it's time consuming, and you have to make sure that you're capturing the content and that the speakers are clear and their microphones are working and they don't accidentally click something on the computer during the lecture that, stops recording, and that's happened. And then you have people frustrated that they've paid for on-demand content that you weren't able to deliver. So it's stressful, but it's great when it goes well, but
we also try to, pre-pandemic, we tried to provide labs as well. And the labs are obviously very well attended. We're all hands-on learners. That's why we became technicians, right? We learned that way. We love that part of it. So we have had dental labs, we've had anesthesia labs, we've had catheter labs, we've had other labs, and those are we have to cap those every year, super well attended. So
we've tried to do some labs as well. We actually had Ed Carlson come to us, and we had so many people. This is actually going back to a previous question. We had so many people poll that they wanted nutritional content. And so we brought in Ed, and he did a feeding tube wet lab. And I was so surprised that honestly it was poorly attended. And I think it may be because we had it running concurrent with other 2 rooms. And so when you take your mass amount of attendees and you split it 3 ways, and then you split it to a specific wet lab that they have to pay for, it really starts to dwindle down. And so Ed was great. And we apologized, the members were so low. He had fun and they had fun. And I guess if you teach one person a new skill, then you've accomplished a goal. But that's tricky too. For us, wet labs have been tricky. Suture labs are always highly attended, but specific wet labs like nutrition, we struggled a little bit with that last year.
I also think it's just in general, knowing which rooms people are going to hit. Like we always know, again, anesthesia is going to be a hot topic, but we had one year, probably I think it was 2018, where it was overflowing anesthesia. And then the other lab was pretty important. It was like a tricky catheters or something like that, tricky venous access. And there was like 10 people in there. There were people mad they couldn't get into the other room.
And that's so tough because we had that too this year. We had a powerhouse anesthesia speaker, Priscilla Paradise. We've had her several years in a row because she's like, they want to hear her.
Yeah.
And her room was packed, like 80% of our attendees. And we had some farm animal lectures going on at the same time, but we found the people that were even farm animal technicians still wanted that anesthesia. And we had like a handful, I'm talking like some lectures, like 2 to 3 people in the room because everybody was in that big lecture, but there's just not really a way to account for that. And you hope the speakers are cool with a small group. But yeah, that happens. It's hard to account for.
I know that's one thing we would like to try to do more with our association stuff, or incorporating wet labs, especially in some more of the small animal stuff. It's just really hard getting the correct venue set up to where you can contain enough people to where it is financially feasible to do it, but then just have the right scenarios set up. So a lot of times our CEs just end up being more lecture based. But a lot of our large animal CE, we're actually able to set up wet labs. And we actually have a lot of small animal technicians that will sign up and join those. Like one of our biggest wet labs was an equine radiology one. So we had people that were small animal technicians only showing up and had never x-rayed a horse before. And by the end of that day, we did like 3 to 4 hour PowerPoint lectures in the morning, just going over anatomy and safety. And then spent 4 to 5 hours in the afternoon just doing nothing but shooting radiographs in different groups and stuff. And I'd be curious going back to see if any of those technicians switched jobs going into mixed animal practice or equine practice at all, because some of them were like, they were the most enthusiastic and involved in everything. And then when we're like, okay, it's a wrap for the day, they're like, wait, I haven't gotten to shoot a horse's neck yet. Can we do that quick? So.
That's fantastic. I love that.
That is really great. Since we're kind of talking about events, there's a question that popped up here about approaches to company sponsorships. Do you all have any kind of specific approach or letters or things that you guys take when you're reaching out to sponsors for your CE events?
We have a volunteer who's part of our committee for our CE events who does all of that. She's amazing. Her paid job is working with vendors for her company. So she actually knows everyone anyway, so it's perfect. But we originally, I wasn't super excited about sponsorship. I had a little bit of personal issue with that, thinking about sponsorship, but then reality and Ed Carlson hit me upside the head and said, we really need to embrace that just because we can provide a better event, and we really can. We can provide a better event. So, and we have, and they've been amazing. And the support that they give, they're just the fact that they show up on a Saturday and a Sunday and give out their wares, they're engaged with technicians and they empower us. Banfield supporting this today it's just amazing. So we definitely have stock communication that we have. We charge for vendor tables. We charge for track sponsorship. They can put some of their stuff in our bags. We pack those bags the night before, and they can put some of their wares in there if they want to. Lunch is usually sponsored as well. Snack breaks are sponsored, all of that. One of the best, and a lot of people on here probably know Ken Yagi, but he was one of our speakers one year, and he was sponsored to do a lunch for us. And it was amazing talk on heartworm of all things, which I never really cared much about. And it sparked my interest in it so much. As a teacher, I taught my students. It wasn't part of our curriculum, but I made it part of the curriculum because it was so much good material. So you do learn a lot from having corporate sponsorship. And I do encourage people to look into reaching out to your reps for sure.
I agree fully. We've gotten substantial financial and just in-person support from some of those big name companies and some of the smaller companies too. We've put together a conference prospectus on different tiers, and then also just opened it up for, we'll take whatever money you're going to give us. You know, what do you want from us? Do you want to have a table? Great, you've got it. What do you want? Do you want for us to stuff our swag bags? Yes, everybody loves swag. Give us things to send out. We have stock send outs as well, just messages we try to send out. It's also very helpful to try to get to them like following a conference or an event that they've already participating in, and getting your dates in order, at least to say, hey, join us for next year, you know, put this on your calendar, because a lot of those bigger companies already allocate budgeting. So you have to get ahead of their budget and get in there so that they can plan to attend your event next year. And that's hard because a lot of our associations, I mean, like, we're scheduling things on the fly. We don't have things built out for 4 years from now. So we try to do our dates and get our calendar set, and then let them know when those dates will be, and then fill them in with the details on where the venue is going to be and what exactly we need from them. But we've had a conference perspective with tiers, and then we'll give them, our big sponsors, a lot of space on our website or social media, and blow those up, and then have a banner with their logo, and then signs outside of the, you know, the conference halls that say sponsored by, as much as we can.
I think that's a great point you brought up about planning. And I think that's one of the things I would caution people about, is you have to give them time, their budgets. And now, I don't know if you've all noticed, but the economy is shrinking. And so you really need to have them plan ahead of time of when they can sponsor you. If you have a conference in March and you ask them in January, they're not going to have the cash for you. But if you have a conference in March of 2024 and you ask them now, perfect timing. That's perfect timing for them. So they need at least a year lead time, depending on when they put their budgets together. We found that to be super true. Someone in the chat, I just happened to notice, had a question about having a conference at a community college. And I love that. If you're starting, especially small, that's where we had it at Becker College. Those were our first, and Mount Ida College. Sadly, both of those have closed here in Massachusetts in the last few years, but that was our original venue, was the colleges. Now, did we have board members who worked at the colleges? Probably, yes, we did. So we had a nice in to that as well. Food services was awesome. We were able to use their food services as well. I don't know if community colleges have food services all the time, but so we started out real small with like 30 people in our first conferences, and then again grew to over 600 for our last in-person one. This year we're doing in person again, so we'll have more numbers to report next year.
Public libraries are also good for those smaller organizations that don't have a big budget and don't have a community college. Alabama started with community colleges as well, and we still do that because it's just a great free resource, especially if you know somebody that works there. But check out public libraries as well, because a lot of them have small conference rooms that you can rent out for really, really cheap.
I think that's a great point. Just one other kind of event question. Are there other ways that you guys have found, besides sponsorships, to offset some conference costs? Have you ever partnered with other organizations or anything?
I know I keep going first, I'm sorry, but I love that question. No. And actually, Ed should be the one who was here today, because Ed Carlson actually a few years ago, before the pandemic, well before, had said to me, we really should consider incorporating other New England, because we're all small states, right? Incorporating other associations. And we did that in our last conference. It was really cool. So Saturday was a MVTA event, and then Sunday was a New England event, all the New England VTAs that were involved. And I think we had 100%, all of 5 New England states were involved. And what that did for us was we had, shared workload. We had shared speaker reach out, like reaching out to different speakers that everybody knows different people kind of thing. And then it really did have a nice shared feel to it. So we've reached out to other associations in the area as well. We are have a very good relationship with our VMA as well here in Massachusetts. We have yet to do a combination conference, but we do go to their conference. We have a table at their conference. We welcome them to come to our table, but that's something I can see maybe in some states working well, is partnering with your MBA as well.
Yeah, that's something we've done in Montana is we've kind of teamed up with our MBMA a couple of times, and it's where we've actually brought in a technician to speak to the veterinarians and stuff. So we've done a lot of like technician utilization in clinics, and because even there's a lot of veterinarians out there that don't really know what all our training involves. So doing that, and then also setting up wet labs where it was veterinarians and technicians working together. And like, so the equine radiology one we did, so we did one day where it was all technicians doing equine radiology, and then this next following day was the MBMA's wet lab where we brought in the same speaker. And so she's a technician and she taught the veterinarians on stuff. And it was a lot of older veterinarians that have been out in practice, probably close to 40 years, some of them it seemed like, doing stuff. And you have this technician, she's showing them all these new tricks and stuff on how to get all your stuff a lot quicker, and the animals stand a lot better and stuff. And it was exciting just sitting back and listening to the conversations happening and stuff. And so working along the VMA was great.
We do the same thing. We are consistently involved in our Birmingham VMA. I'm the liaison for the Alabama VMA, and we're also represented in our Madison County, which is the Huntsville, Alabama, and trying to work our way into some of those local VMAs too. We did a similar thing where we invite DVMs to our conferences, and we have a few that show up every year, but we had one come to our summer CE. He brought his whole clinic down from the Birmingham area, so about a 4-hour drive, and he was really impressed with our speakers. And actually 2 of our speakers he thought were veterinarians, and he was blown away. And so we also sprinkled in some veterinary specialists so that we captured the DVMs as well. And he brought back some of the names of our technician speakers to his VMA, and had, for the first time ever, one of our technicians speak at that. And it was really, really highly attended by veterinarians. And so we're kind of starting to pick up some momentum there as well.
Really fantastic. Kind of shifting gears a little bit, a question that has kind of come up here that I think is a great one to talk about are tips on kind of recruiting some of your existing members for board positions. You guys are obviously very heavily involved in your state association and stuff. So what would you say are some tips that you think would help encourage some of your members to be thinking about leadership positions? And I don't know, Eli, would you like to start us off with that?
That's a hard one.
Okay.
I could open my big mouth again if you want.
Go for it, Betsy. Go for it.
Sorry. It's just because I'm the old person here. So it's actually a great question, because I feel like our board goes through 10-year cycles of the same people in different seats on the board. And I'm literally watching that play out, because when I was young to the state, I saw the group and intimidated by them, didn't know who they were, and kind of started volunteering for the board because I wanted to get involved and I wanted to make a difference. I came from California. Things were much different there than here. And then I got my first position. And so that's, kind of the way it happens. People volunteer for a committee. So taking your volunteers is one thing. One of the questions we ask on renewal is, would you like to volunteer with the MBTA or on application? Both, they're in both the application and renewal. And then we try to actively reach out to them. I was responsible for that last year. I'm not going to lie, I didn't do a great job. But now that I'm past president, I'm hoping to do that better. But it's making those direct contacts with those people, saying, dear Lindsay, whatever their name, not just a canned letter, looking at where they come from, really connecting with them, really making it a personalized thing. And so I am been on the board for 10 years and I'm hoping not to be on the board next year. I know that sounds horrible, but it's true because I want the next generation to be there on the next board. And we're seeing that. We have a ton of new board members that have never been on the board before. A couple of them were committee members, but also personal connection is a big thing too, right? You know somebody, you work with somebody, you have worked with somebody, and you just really talk to them about this is, what we need to move our association forward. And I'm always about that. Like, we need new blood, new ideas. I've done these things that I'm proud of on the board for the last 10 years. It's somebody else's turn to take it the next step. Just like I was able to do that. So making those connections, personal connections are super important.
Yeah. One thing that we'll try and do as board members is like when we are doing an in-person CE and stuff is we try and like make little mental notes or scribble something down of what members are being the most engaged while we're speaking. So, and making sure that we're reaching out with them. Or like our last board elections that we just had, we had a new gal that was nominated for a position and she didn't get it. But it was like really exciting to see new names come up on the nomination forms. So like I automatically, when we did our final counts and stuff, I wrote her a letter expressing the gratitude for her being nominated. And then I was like, we have this coming up in the future. Are you willing to help us with this? So she's now one who's going to be helping set up a CE for this fall for us. But it's just keeping them linked in with the board to make sure that they're still feeling the involvement and appreciated by the board for wanting to step up and have interest.
I agree. It's tough. We're actually in an election year right now. We've got, we do 2-year terms on ours. And so by default, the president-elect will be 4 years because it's 2 years and then 2 years. But I'm with Betsy. Like I've been involved for several years and I'm not losing steam yet, but I can definitely see that after president, you work so hard all these years and you really want new people to come in and carry it well. And, so that all of your work continues, and connections are really important, bringing in key people, like Eli said, that you kind of pick out or keep your eye on that are involved already and seeing if they want to take that next step into volunteering or giving them little duties and tasks. And then also paying attention to the representatives that you have that aren't really doing a whole lot for you. And then as a board, either unfortunately voting them off of their leadership or not renewing, or however you want to do that as a board, but kind of getting rid of some of that dead weight that they're saying that they're a representative, but they're not doing anything for your association. That's a little bit dangerous too, because you have to have people that are motivated and you keep them motivated and hope that they continue in their leadership. So we'll see how we do with nominations this year and see how that goes, but it's a nominating year for us as well, so we'll vote in October.
Someone in the chat asked, how do you do your board elections? So do you want to, I can answer that real quick. We just changed ours. We used to have a different paradigm, but right now we're actually holding elections every year because we have a president-elect and nominated every year. So we have to do that every year as well. So I'm currently past president. I was president last year. It was before this happened. I would have been president-elect the year before. So that's a 3-year commitment. Someone asked, can they stay on the board? We have committee chairs that come to board meetings as well. It's kind of an open thing, but if we have anything we need to discuss that's board only, they need to leave the meeting. So if you're not an actual board member, of which we have 5, then you can't be on the meeting for certain things. If it's like about a member or something like that. But I don't know if you guys want to answer.
Betsy, you guys have past president, vice president, or no vice president?
No, we don't have a vice president anymore. So we have, actually, I think we have 6. I think I'm wrong. We have 2 members at large, a treasurer, a secretary. Oh, I lied. We have 7. We have a past president, and president-elect. So we have 7 on our board. I feel like there's only that
treasurer and 2 members.
Yeah.
Alabama has president, president-elect, secretary, treasurer.
Okay.
But we're looking at switching that up too, because it's a long term if you're 2 years and then 2 years and you were participating
Right.
before.
Yeah,
But
that's why ours is a 3-year commitment. If you want to be president, then it's a 3-year commitment.
And we lose a lot of our immediate past presidents, once they're done with president, they're like, whoa, okay. And some of them kind of stay engaged here and there, but not immediately engaged. And I think there's a little bit of a downfall to that, because if you have too much new blood, then there's not enough people that understand what's been going on and how things have been done.
Right.
So,
Yeah, so when I got on the BSVTA's executive board, we revamped how the board was completely done, because it originally was you started in a director position and then each year you just moved up. So that could be a total of, it was like 5 or 6 years of being on the board till you were president and stuff. And in 2013, the BSVTA was like on the verge of completely dissolving. And if they went away, then there'd been no credentialing of technicians at all in Montana. So at that year, there was kind of a whole group of us that just stuck our hands up in the air and just volunteered for board positions. And so when we recreated the board, we sat down with our bylaws and constitution and rewrote all of the board positions, like the job duties and everything. So we have a past president who they serve on the board, but they don't have like voting rights on the board. They're more of just an advisory position. So somebody that knows how things are ran. So, but they can give advice, but yet it's still up to the main board members on how they go about things. So, and then you have your president, which is a 2-year term, president-elect, 2-year term, and then secretary, treasurer, and certification coordinator, which that position will be going away in the future since we're switching the licensure. So those are all 1-year terms. And then we have 3 director positions. So director 1 and director 2 are for a credential technician to hold, and they are 2-year terms, and their elections alternate years. So there's always one director that's been on the board when a new director comes on. And then we have the director 3 position, which is a 1-year term, and that one is designed to be held by a non-credentialed individual. So like a veterinary assistant stuff. So that way we have representation of our entire veterinary staff pretty much on the board.
I like that a lot. I heard somebody I saw somebody in the comments ask us if we had any district reps or regional reps. Alabama does. We have district reps, and they come to our open meetings and they come to our board meetings, but they're non-voting. But they're there to kind of take the information back from our meetings and we use them as volunteers and try to keep them engaged as much as we can, and hope that they're disseminating the information that we're putting forward and sharing things on social media and helping try to engage in their area. Susanna is one of our, she's on here today. I see her peeking in the chat, but she's wonderful and great. And we've given her little tasks here and there. We don't have a historian for Alabama, but we tasked Susanna with trying to dig up some of the history of our association and try to track way back on our, lineage of board members and things that we've done. And she put together a little PowerPoint for our members, which was kind of fun. So trying to just get those district reps involved.
Yeah, that's something that we've kind of been looking at, trying to start up here, because our state is so big, is trying to set it up into districts and have a member represent each one. And then having that district rep also maybe help set up a CE event in that region, because we do try and move our CE events all around the state because we are so big. It's hard. I mean, there's some places it takes me 7 hours to drive to. So trying to make sure we're reaching the technicians all throughout the state and getting it to where they can come get their CEs without having to drive 1,000,000 miles to do it. So.
And Betsy was to drive 7 hours, she'd be in Maryland by that time.
Exactly. Virginia and CU. We don't have district reps. I think that's a fantastic idea. I feel like we kind of do with the Cape, because we have a member who's she's the one we asked us to start the CE on the Cape. And so we do have her, but she's not officially on the board or anything like that. We love that idea.
we're also trying to, in the past, we've had district reps, but there weren't any specific duties, so they really weren't sure what they were supposed to be doing. And that in turn is not helpful to us. So they felt like they weren't engaged, and we felt like they weren't engaged. So we're actually opening up our constitution and bylaws and working with an attorney to try to get some of these things set. And that gives us a little bit of a leg to stand on too, so that if, like I mentioned before, if they're not working for ABTA, or if they do become detached and lose interest, then we can say, okay, well, our representatives need to attend at least one event a year. And I'm just making examples because we haven't solidified it, but at least one event a year, they need to volunteer, or they need to attend at least 3 meetings a year. And if they don't, then the board can maybe vote to put in a different representative. And we've just tried to take it that way. And we're trying to define things that our reps can be doing and should be doing for us to be useful.
One of the things too we do is we have our meetings virtually even before our pandemic. And so we did have one of our board members was from Western Massachusetts, which again is only like 3 hours away for us, but still it made it accessible to her to be able to be on the board because the meetings are virtual. So I'm sure most of you are all doing virtual meetings anyway, but it really does open it up to different people.
Same, we've stuck with virtual meetings. It was in person before COVID, but they were in Birmingham, and for a lot of us that's a 2 to 3 hour drive after work or on a weekend. And so we've switched to virtual board meetings, and they're pretty well attended. I mean, it's kind of hit or miss, but we do membership meetings, open membership meetings quarterly, and then we do board meetings every month. So the board meetings will have our executive board and our district representatives and volunteers, and we'll open it up. If there's somebody who just really wants to attend, we'll let them join a board meeting just to see what we're all about. But we'll do a quarterly meeting where we open that up to the entire membership, and hope that we get some people from the membership to come in and chat with us.
Yeah, we do all of our board meetings virtually, except for when we're having a CE event, then we'll have an in-person board meeting like the night before the event. And a lot of times we'll have members come in and they sit in with those, because most of the time they're in one of our hotel rooms or something, because we try and have the in-person meeting and then we all go out to dinner afterwards and stuff. But we have a lot of the members that'll come and just sit in and listen there. And I think that helps get them engaged a lot too, because we have a really fun board. We've all gotten to be friends over the years, and most of the time we spend a lot of time laughing, and then we have to get ourselves back on track because it's really easy to fall down rabbit holes. So, but them just sitting back and getting to see like, oh, these guys are actually enjoying what they're doing. I think that really helps get people more engaged also.
Yeah, I agree. When they see that we're having a lot of fun, and it's, yes, we're doing business, but we're also going off on random tangents and just really enjoying each other's conversations, I think you get more people interested as well.
Great. I think this is a really interesting question that has come up, and I'd love for your all's feedback on this. In those states where licensure is voluntary, how do you handle those unlicensed professionals and not alienate them? Person in particular is asking from the point of view of a CVT only association.
I think I'm the only state, aren't I? So it's me. So it's tough. I'm not gonna lie. It's tough because, like I said, we don't know how many technicians we have or people identifying as technicians in the state that we have. I did realize there's about 1,700 veterinarians, so we can kind of extrapolate from there. But they come to our CE events. I mean, again, we do offer really low cost CE considering, and they don't need the CE, right? As far as like the credit that they need the content, but not the CEUs because they don't have a credential to put that towards. So that's how we mostly engage with our non-CVT members. I think it's a really it is tough because we can't direct email them. We do have, actually, I don't think I wrote it down, but we do have so people have to go through MemberClicks to come to our CE event and register as a non-member. And so we occasionally will mail them about different things because we have their information about, especially when things are changing and legislation events and things like that. But it is a little bit of a challenge for us.
Yeah, we were really similar to that same thing, Betsy, where so our membership is open to everybody on the veterinary staff, but a lot of the people who attend our CE events are non-credentialed technicians because we have to have them in our state. I mean, when you only have 250 credentialed technicians and over 700 practicing veterinarians, like the non-credentialed people are extremely essential for the success of our vet clinics here. And involving them and just treating them like the rest of our technicians, I think helped keep everybody involved. And then part of our legislation was we were able to reopen a grandfather clause. So a lot of our non-credentialed individuals in the state who have been doing this job for years are absolutely amazing and brilliant, genius people that are way smarter than I am a lot of times that I ask questions to, opening up a route for them to get their credentialing.
I think that's a really, really great point. And I think because our window for alternate pathway closed, it made me just process here, trying to get out to all of the community that we need your help getting legislation passed because there will be a grandfathering clause in that as well. We hope, I mean, that's what we wrote in, but and there's your opportunity to be able to take the VT&E to be able to become a credentialed or licensed, hopefully, technician in the state. So I love that. Thank you.
Alabama's will allow everybody, as I said before. So we have our LVTs and then we have an associate membership as well. The perks are the same. You're an AVTA member, you're an AVTA member. And then for our conference events and things like that, we'll have a member ticket and then we'll have a non-member ticket, and the non-member tickets are going to be higher and hopefully encourage that. I am curious what other states are charging for membership annually.
Our membership's $35 for the BSVTA.
Across the board?
Mm-hmm. Student membership, I think, is like $20.
Okay. Alabama is $35 for credentialed technicians, $30 for associates, and then students are free as long as they provide us a copy of current enrollment in an accredited veterinary institution. So whether that's a DVM program or an LVT program, as long as they have proof that and it could be their student ID or their tuition or their course schedule. We're not super strict on what kind of proof, but as long as it's valid proof, they're free. We've gone back and forth on that, but for 35 for credentialed, 30 for associate, and free for students.
Ours is 50, so we're up to 50. People are putting theirs in the chat. Sorry, distracted.
We actually raised it $10 this year. It was a little bit cheaper, but
and actually for renewal it's
much higher. So
sorry.
For renewal, I just see some that are a lot higher than that.
Yeah, a lot higher. I know California is pretty high too, but for renewal it's 50. For a new member, I think it's 60. I haven't been a new member in a while, and I think students are free, like you were saying, as long as they provide documentation that they're students. And then associate member, I'm trying to remember. Remember what associate is. Yeah, a lot of good, interesting, the variance.
Yeah, there's a lot of varied levels of dues in here. I think this could be a topic for a session later or something. Just kind of another question here. How do you guys verify licensure for membership? Is there any specific method that you guys use?
Ours is the state directory. Now, if they're a credentialed tech from a different state, we on our membership form ask for the license number. There's really not a way for us. I mean, I guess they could type in 123 and we'd say, yeah, that's your state license number. We don't know, but some of it's on our system. But for the state, if they say LVT, Alabama, and they list their license number, which is a mandatory field, we can cross-check on our directory, our state directory. And we do. So I think most people are honest about it because you have to list your number. But if it's blank, we ask them what the number is. For us, I guess there's not really a benefit to lying because our LVT membership is the highest. It's 35 for credentialed and then 30 and 20. So I think if people were going to lie, they would probably lie the other way for the cheaper membership options. And I'm not sure why really it was ever structured to be more expensive for credentialed technicians. That's something that's just been carried on for years and years, and that's something that I've thought about looking at. But we do discount things along the way throughout the year to kind of make up that, so free shipping on t-shirts, things like that. So balances out here and there. It's still not, I don't think, very expensive, especially according to some of these here, but we're also more expensive than others. So that's definitely interesting to see the fees.
Since we are the credentialing body, our credentialing, it's a credentialing fee. It's not just a membership fee. And that does make us a little different with who is allowed to be a full member, because if you're a full member, you're a CVT. We're saying that you've met the requirements to be a CVT. So but so it's $65 for a new membership for us, and then to renew is $50, and then again students are free. And then we do have an associate member, and I'm sorry I don't know the fee, but I think it's a lot less. It's like $35, I think.
Great. Betsy, kind of sticking with you, I wanted to ask a question of you of in your journey of establishing licensing requirements with MVTA, what have you found to be some of the most valuable learning experiences in that process in terms of kind of engaging your membership?
So engaging our membership is, again, getting into the hospitals and getting into the practices and actually having the conversations with people who are not members. Our membership is all behind it. They want this, they want to have scope of practice, they want to have title protection and all of the things that we want as well. And so it's the biggest thing was actually getting the veterinary community to support us. And I'm not sure we're there yet, but I think we've made progress. The MVMA, so having the MVMA on board with us has been huge. So we didn't originally. The first years that we actually put in legislation, the MVMA did not support our bill at that time. They do now. So they have publicly come out and supported our bill. We have a very good relationship with the current board and with the executive director of the MVMA, and that is hugely essential. There was a lot of fear, right? There was a lot of fear of the unknown, people thinking, especially practice owners, if all of a sudden my technicians can't be technicians anymore, my practice goes under, right? So assuring them that's not our goal at all. We want to, again, all of these people working as technicians are highly skilled and probably highly educated as well. And so we just want them to get the license and to give, again, title protection for our industry and to elevate the level of to make veterinary technology a career, not just a job, which is what it started out as, which is fair. That happened in nursing, human nursing as well. So really getting the veterinarians on board and the whole veterinary community on board with what we're moving towards was a huge lesson for us. We didn't do it well at the beginning, but we're definitely doing it much better now.
That's a lot of work, building those bridges between the associations and making sure you're educating and doing it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
So, because it took us a long time to get our VMA support up here and also the support of the state veterinary board. So, and luckily we didn't push on through legislation until we had their full support, because otherwise our bill would have been dead in the water. But that was a lot of showing up to meetings, and then all of a sudden, just because you kept showing up to their meetings and making a presence, all of a sudden you're being invited to speak at their meetings. And then like our VMA started inviting us to set up booths during, like if they were having a trade show at one of their conferences, they'd be like, hey, we set this table aside for you guys, so set up a booth. And that way our members, when they walk by, can ask you whatever questions they need, so you guys can be educating the veterinarians on what exactly you're doing, and they're getting it from you guys and not just through the rumor mills, because those fire up all the time all over the place and you're having to correct a lot of information.
Yeah. And I would just, there's been some great chat going on here too. If any any of our participants here would like to have a question asked live to the group, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll give you the capabilities to talk here. Hayley, if you had to give your fellow leaders one piece of advice on what not to do in encouraging member participation, what would you say?
What not to do? I would say being so selective or not being inclusive. Really, we've done better when we've done really things that are inclusive, whether that's inclusive to credentialed technicians and non-credentialed technicians, or whether that's inclusive to not just small animal and not just large animals. So I would not be too closed off and specific or too closed-minded, because your job as an association is to reach the entire state and everybody within that. So I would not pigeonhole yourself into a certain mindset or a certain track, whether that's CE or membership or rules or regulations or anything like that. Trying to not close yourself off to ideas and topics and discussions across the state.
Betsy, same kind of question over to you. Is there anything that you would say not to do?
Well, I think Hayley's perspective is spot on, right? You don't want to ostracize any group, no matter how small you think they might be in your area. We've found that with our research technicians, none of us worked in research, so we didn't even kind of consider that, and they kept bringing it to our attention and really recognizing that. And so making sure you keep your mind open and your ears and your eyes open to finding that. And I think what not to do. Can I do a double negative? Like what not to do is don't not survey your members or your even your veterinary community. Make sure that you're engaging the entire community. So don't just look at just your members, look outside. And again, we're a little different because we're the credentialing body. But talking to our veterinarians, talking to our assistants, talking to other people in the community, and making sure we're open communication. Open communication is huge for me too. And making sure we're being clear and incorporating the right people in that communication.
And that for us goes across social media too, like the things that we're sharing from other, just like on our feed that we're reposting or resharing, making sure that we're sharing some exotics stuff, and we're sharing some internal medicine, and we're sharing some dentistry, and we're sharing some large animal and some equine, and we're sharing some, pride, and we're sharing diversity and things like that, because we're such a broad field. And so not just sharing the same stuff to the same audience on social media, really making a concerted effort to find a good article that reaches that niche of technicians that have that interest, and sharing information on that and opening the doors for those discussions to come in.
Awesome. Eli, what would you say is the one thing your fellow leaders can do today that will make the biggest difference in encouraging their members to stay involved with their state association?
Just being as open with all your communication as possible. Like, it's being as concise as you can be when you're writing things. Just make it as understandable as can be. And that, I guess I don't really know how to word my answer.
Hayley, what would you say is one thing that leaders, you kind of touched upon what not to do in sort of some of that way as well.
Actively listen, I think, is really important. You can't act on everything, but you can actively listen to your state, your members, your bordering states, and then act where you can and really pay attention to what they are wanting from you, what they don't like from you, and what's important to your membership.
And Betsy, I'll throw it over to you.
Could you just repeat the question so I'm sure I'm answering
Sure.
it?
What would you say is one thing that fellow leaders can do today to make the biggest difference in encouraging members to stay engaged with their state association?
Yes, being responsive is huge. So not, even though I know we're all volunteers, well, I'm assuming we're all volunteers, making sure that we get back to people and, like Hayley said, listen to them actually, and don't just disregard what they're asking or saying, really have a thoughtful response. And I know it can be challenging, but really trying to have people on the board that can do that. And we actually hired a contractor as a membership application processor, so she actually is the one of the ones that communicates mostly with people asking questions and stuff, and we pay her as a contracted employee, not employee, contracted person, to do those sorts of things, and it's really helped a lot because a lot of us just don't have that kind of time. So
Awesome. Well, I think this has been a really wonderful and engaging session. I want to thank everyone for participating in the chat and in the questions, and especially our panelists here, Betsy, Eli, and Hayley, for your perspectives coming from your state associations. And I'd like to invite everyone to join us for our next session of the summit, which will be beginning at 12:50. How to build good relationships with veterinary boards and legislators. I've been seeing some comments here in the chat about this particular topic, so I really invite everyone to be sure to join us for that. I'm going to pop the Zoom link in here for everyone for easy access, as well as this has been emailed to you guys too, and we'll be starting that just a little bit before 12:50 and hope to see everyone there. Thank you all again so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
thank you. Thanks, everyone.